Hey, what's going on, guys? My name's Dylan.
And I'm Carrie, and we are two guys sharing conversations about our pursuit of life.
This podcast was born out of our relentless belief in helping others.
We are here to offer a glimpse into some of the hardest moments life has to offer.
Together, we're going to bring you the motivation and determination to build an attitude that is both relentless and tenacious. Welcome to the Relentless Pursuit. That was good.
Hey there, guys. Welcome to the first ever episode of the Relentless Pursuit. Our first topic to kick everything off, we're going to start out with starting over, hitting the reset button. Both of us have experienced some pretty crazy things in life, and there's been a lot of times where we've literally had to sit down, assess everything that's going on, and hit the reset button on our lives. Maybe all of it, maybe just some aspects of it. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we get started, though, Dylan, is there anything you want to talk about that's been going on lately?
Well, I'd say this topic kind of comes at a pretty important time in American culture. We're seeing all of this stuff with gun control and speaking about, gun violence. Now, my position on gun violence is I'm a firearms instructor. I've been using firearms for the past 10 years, and even longer actually. And when we're talking about hitting the reset button, I think this is pretty applicable when we're talking about actually looking at how we think about different topics, not only in our lives, but in the grand scheme of society in general. So when we're talking about gun control, when we talk about gun control, is gun control the actual problem? Is it the basic problem? In my mind, I don't think it is, and I think that's one of the basic problems with the discussions between conservatives and Democrats or liberals, and however you want to look at it. I don't really pick a side when I'm talking about political agendas, because one side or the other is going to have issues. And if we can't hit the reset button and say, hey, if we can't take a step back and look at both sides of the picture, then we're not actually hitting the reset button. We're not taking a look at what happened and what needs to happen. And we're not taking a look at someone talking and listening to them and working on a process of how we're supposed to be thinking about where we need to go next. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, absolutely. I get what you're saying, and what he's referring to is exactly what we want to get into today. Is we get so many times in society, whether it's politics, whether it's our own lives, that we get caught up with what's in front of us. We get caught up with the things that we want to look at, we want to focus on, and we got to start to learn how to take a step back as a society. We got to take a step back. Everybody's focusing on pushing forward. Everyone's focusing on making sure that they're bettering themselves, bettering their lives. And the thing that's crazy about all this gun control stuff is it really does come out of the amount of empathy that we have for others. Mm-hmm. The problem is that we're focusing that empathy on what our opinion is and what our focus is on, and we're not taking a step back and allowing our field of view to be completely opened up so we can see every aspect. I absolutely understand where you're going with that. And that's a perfect way for us to kind of kick off this discussion today, because we really want to focus on how can we take a step back in our lives, and how can we figure out not what's wrong with our lives, but what's going well, that we can take that to create momentum to continue on with what we want to go towards. Right. And that's really what we want to focus on today. So what we want to get into is, basically taking a step back, figuring out, is it time for something new? Is it time to change something up in your life? I know Dylan and I both experienced that, where there were times where we just had to stop, we're done. Okay. And we got to take a step back and go for something new, whether it was with athletics, whether it was with schoolwork, whether it was with, changing in a relationship in our lives, friends, family, all that kind of stuff. There's times where you got to figure out when it's time to do something new, and you can't do that until you back off, hit that reset button, and look at it from a completely different perspective. Yeah. Can you give us any insight on what you usually do when you're trying to look for the next thing, when you're trying to figure out where you're going next with things?
Yep. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself and my kind of career progression with the military. Back in 2012, I deployed to Afghanistan. I came home, and about 4 days later, I was doing jiu-jitsu because I used to teach that, and I kind of came back to the same gym, and I used to roll with these guys. A new guy came in. I put him in my guard, and he basically took me down for a heel hook, and my knee popped out. One of my best friends was there. He knew exactly what it was right away. I had torn my ACL. There's really no other knee damage other than my ACL, but I was straight off coming from Afghanistan. I had seen some really terrible things, and that stuck with me, but it also gave me a mindset of like, I wasn't complacent at all. I knew everything around me, and I knew exactly what I had to do in every situation. It just felt like, I was always in control, but in reality, what happened, I figured out in that moment that I was not in control. At no point in your life will you ever have full control of your life, because things will come out of left field every single day, every single minute, and every single second that you never expect. I never expected to tear an ACL at the age of 25. Never would have expected it, because I had no prior issues with my knees up until that point. And 3 years later, I'm here. I've gone through 3 different ACL reconstructive surgeries on both knees. I've got a new cadaver ACL on my left knee and my right knee. So, what I had to do was basically say, from my entire life of being like really athletic, constantly having a direction of physically where I wanted to go and always being in shape, to 25, I was stuck with this injury that I had no idea what I was doing.
Right.
Like having an ACL tear, you literally can't move your knee for 3 or 4 weeks, and then when you have the surgery, you are limited for about a year before you can really do any kind of athletic event. Like I was trying to play soccer at the time. So hitting that reset button, there's always going to be a moment for me that it's almost like you're mourning. You're mourning for the loss of what you had, your freedom basically, and you need that time. But at the same time, you cannot overextend that time. I was stuck in Fort Knox, away from all of my friends. I mean, you know all about that. I was gone for 7 months immediately following an deployment. It was a really rough time for me.
Right. Oh yeah.
And that, I was lucky to have the contact with the friends that I had, but it took me, it took a mindset. And what I did, what I started to do with building a mindset was starting with, keywords. I put up a quote on my mirror that I would read every single day, at least like 3 or 4 times a day, because I was in a room for 20 hours a day.
I think what's important to remind you too is, and it's always been a tough subject for you to talk about, but he was not in a good place mentally either. No. Things that happened over in Afghanistan, things that we've really never even discussed at depth, because it's not necessary, but I know he's gone through it. And you're talking about being mentally and emotionally drained, and within a matter of months being physically incapacitated as well. You're talking about the trifecta of of what could be the epitome of being as low as it gets.
Right. And
I think that was one thing that, having watched you go through that, made me realize, 2 things. The whole cliche of, it's always other people have it worse, other people have harder problems, that kind of thing. But I think the biggest thing that I noticed about that was, it wasn't so much you were necessarily succeeding in those times. Mm-hmm. There were times where I'm sure that there wasn't progress. There's no progress being made. No, but sometimes it's not even about that. It's about just getting up every single day. If you can get up every single day, manage one small task, sometimes that's all it takes.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And watching him go through that and having experienced similar things like that, it's one day at a time. We all try to wake up in the morning, and we talk about this too. Wake up, go out there, kick some ass in the morning, and get things done. Some days that doesn't happen, and that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. So if you're one of those people right now, or have been, or in the future get to that point, I just want you to remember, every day is not going to be a great day. It's not.
Yeah.
You can't wake up every morning and be on top of the world. It just doesn't happen that way. You know, you look at, think people look at the New England Patriots, this dynasty and everything. Everybody wants to see them fall. Everybody wants to see the person on top fall. I personally like to see the person on top stay on top because I know how hard that is. Mm-hmm. And all of you do too. Everybody knows we're going to go through ebbs and flows. But remember, when you are in that bottom, you're down at the bottom, you're down at the rocks, just take it one day at a time. Yeah. One day at a time. Do one task. One little thing.
Yeah, success is not going to always look like success.
No.
You are not,
God, no.
You are not always going to be in your best shape. You're not always going to be at the top of your game. Everything's not always going to go your way. Plans have a beautiful way of falling apart in front of you. And to be successful, to continue striving for excellence, is simply doing what you want to do and continuing to get up every day and do it. The hardest times are really what define success. So, looking at your life introspectively is always one of the most important things that you can do, but you need to be mindful of how you do it. So looking at, what you think is failure is really building you up for success if you let it. So if you look at your failures and you say, I can look at this as I failed, or as I can look at this as a learning experience. And it's very simple. It's a very simple way of changing how you think about things, and that's the reset button. It's not about your failures. It's about how you come back from your failures. And I mean that's one of the biggest changes that you can make, and it's one of the hardest things because it's simple but it's complex. And that was the kind of thing, like, throughout my life I learned that innately, and that's which makes it hard for me to really explain how I did it, but I think it's arguably one of the most important things that you can do for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of moving forward here, we've discussed hitting the reset button, we've discussed what it's like to be at the bottom and what you need to do each and every day. Now, one of the hardest things is to figure out whether or not the next opportunity you find is the right opportunity. And Dylan and I are doing this. We really have a passion for talking to each other about this stuff, and I can't tell you how many times we've spent hours and hours on the phone together. Yeah. And it's sometimes it's nonsense, babbling. Sometimes it's really, really deep, really deep conversation that both of us walk away from just either inspired or, in some way just have a thought-provoking moment that you just can't duplicate. Without having that one-on-one interaction. You can't have those breakthroughs in your mindset unless you have somebody else with you doing it with you. Yeah. Having that connection there. So what we want to get into now is whether or not you found the right thing to go into. Both of us have obviously tried and failed at many things. Okay. I bet you we would argue on who has failed more times because we both know how hard we've had it and we know how hard the other person's had it. To me, the hardest thing for me to identify is whether or not it's the correct opportunity. And this is something that we sort of discussed the other night in that, something that's come to light for me is listening to other podcasts, listening to other people talk about this stuff. And, like Dylan said before, like he had a quote he put up on his mirror to remind him every day to refocus, recenter himself, whatever it was. And for me, it's been listening to other people share their experiences or other people talk about certain topics. And one of the things that I took away from an episode not too long ago was simply the thought of go into every interaction with a human being that you have as if it's going to be the next big thing. Go into every interaction as if I'm going to give this person everything that I can possibly give to them and show them exactly who I am and then see what they return it with. Because, and when you think about that and you think about your entire life, you know what that's like. You know what it's like to give yourself away to somebody completely and not get it in return. But you also know what it's like when they do return it. Yeah. And a perfect example I experienced not 3 weeks ago, in that I completely and totally just was having a good day. I wasn't even thinking about it. Had a great conversation with a guy, lasted for about an hour and a half, and he and I are now starting on a really big project together that I'm super excited about. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things that I stepped back from and I looked at after a couple of weeks and went, holy crap. I mean, yeah. This is something that, had I been having a bad day, had I been having an off day, if, let's say I just decided to say hi to the guy and walk away, This is a total stranger. I wouldn't have this opportunity now. So we really want to look at whether or not we are actually putting out the energy we need to put out first, before you start getting crazy about whether or not this is the right thing. You'll know when it's the right thing.
Yeah.
You'll get that energy back. You'll feel that energy back because they will reciprocate it for you.
Yeah.
They will absolutely show you whether or not you are giving them what they want, and you will know whether or not you're getting what you want back out of it.
And it's really good to test the waters with people because they're like Carrie's kind of talking about with different people and how people respond to you. Human interaction is so important that we neglect it often.
Yes.
This cell phone is one of the biggest reasons that you neglect people in your life. And when me and Carrie talk, like, just because Carrie doesn't agree with me on something doesn't mean I can't pursue it. If I can bounce it off Carrie and he doesn't like it, and I can bounce it off another friend of mine, everything is going to be for a specific niche in your group. Like, this podcast is going to be for a specific set of people, a group of people. Other podcasts are going to be for other people, and that's fine. You do what you got to do. The most important thing is stay true to what you believe in. If you believe it's going to help you or help others, stick with it. If Carrie doesn't agree with it, that's fine. If I agree with it, talk to me, right? But at the same time, don't just disregard what Carrie says because he doesn't agree with you.
Right.
Take it, learn from it. If it's something that you can actually apply, that's progress.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest things is that people are willing to disregard something they believe in because someone doesn't like it, or the other, on the flip side, people are unwilling to learn from people that don't like something simply because they didn't treat them well. That's kind of the flip side of what Carrie was explaining earlier, is like, just because someone treats you poorly does not mean that their knowledge is irrelevant. And that's, I think, that's a really important topic for what I kind of brought up earlier with gun control. Gun control is just an example, but you can look at all of American politics in general and understand that knowledge is pretty much irrelevant if they disagree on TV. And that's one of the issues with American culture these days, is that there's no cohesive progress being made because it's so inundated with irrelevant knowledge or false facts or whatever that's called. But I mean, it's just like,
was it fake news?
Yeah, fake news. I mean, hey, cheers for fake news. Because you spin it one way, it means it's irrelevant. And sorry about that timer. That timer means we've got to take a break. And we'll be back with you after a short break. So.
All right, guys, we're back again. Sorry about that delay. Hopefully we do a good enough job of making sure you didn't notice it. So, what we were talking about previously was basically how to figure out whether the next thing is the right next thing, whether it's the right thing to follow down. And we both kind of hit on two separate points. My big point, my big emphasis for myself lately has been, just putting the energy out there and figuring out if that energy is going to be returned. You're going to know. It's one of those things that we don't have to practice. We don't have to, do drills on or anything like that as human beings. If you have any type of social interaction skills, which everybody does, you're going to know when you're getting that energy back. You're going to know it. It's a feeling, it's a notion, it's, whatever you want to call it, intuition, but you're going to know it. And the other thing that we were talking about, that Dylan was talking about, was
things that involve stuff.
Things that involve stuff. I know, I did that on purpose.
It's not always serious around here. We are kind of funny.
Not really.
Not really. No.
I am. Dylan's not.
My big thing is human interaction. If you're, what you have to try and, for me, what you have to try and understand is you're dealing with people that have one, they have a life. They have other friends. They have other family. They have other people in their lives that are coming down on them. So when you are trying to get something done, when you are trying to find an opportunity, build something, you can put some expectations into people, but you have to understand that those expectations are not always going to be met because other factors, other people are going to, or other things are going to come down on that person in particular. You know, so when me and Kerry are working together, it's based on our interactions. Like, I know Kerry, I know what he's going to do, and he knows what I'm going to do, and we play off of those personalities. That's why we work well together when it comes to stuff like this. There are other things that me and Kerry do not work well at.
Absolutely.
And we understand that.
Absolutely.
That doesn't mean that we don't do those things. It's just...
Well, and I think the biggest thing that it comes down to is, you know, the biggest reason why our relationship has, I mean, it's gone through some shit.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. But the biggest reason that it has continued to come back and has continued to get stronger each time it's come back is because for whatever reason, we are not able to bullshit each other. You know, and I've been able to, you know, push people away. That's kind of what my move has always been in life, is to push people away. And Dylan was one of those people that there's just no way for me to do it. You know, I mean, I don't know what's wrong with him, but I was just never able to do it.
A lot.
You know, I thank him for that specifically, but, you know, I thank the fact that we are that type of personality, that he's that type of personality. And I have met others like him, not exactly like him, but I've met others like him where it's, you know, there isn't a thing that I could do that is going to make him step away from me. And the biggest reason that is because of the amount of respect, mutual respect we have for each other. Yeah. And that's something that our society is lacking. I mean, you can go back to the gun control issue. We can go back to, you know, getting on our phones and all the crap that people say behind their screens, behind their usernames, all that kind of stuff. It is the fact that we are not showing the respect to other people. Yeah. And, you know, I used to hate the term expect respect, you know, when it pertained to teachers or professors or, you know, anybody that was higher up. I used to hate that term. But you shouldn't. You shouldn't expect to be respected. What you should do, though, is show other people respect.
Always.
Because when you do that, you show them that you are somebody that is willing to go out there and grind with them. You show that you're somebody that's going to... You put on a persona. You give them a persona of somebody that they can trust. Mm-hmm. You know, and if you can't trust this person, if you can't, you know, share some sort of connection with them through a mutual respect, it's useless. So the biggest thing that we're talking about with this finding or following your passion, or whether it's the next big thing, which one to go down, it's find something that you feel like you can't live without. Mm-hmm. You know, when you can't live without it, when it's on your mind constantly, that's the right path to go down. And then, like Dylan said, when you go to bounce that idea off of other people, you're going to get responses. And you know what? When Dylan and I started talking about this podcast thing, I brought it up, and it was, you know, it was our birthday. All of a sudden, boom, we were both excited. We're ready to go. And I mean, we're talking 5 days later, mm-hmm. we're starting our first podcast. I mean, it was no discussion whatsoever. Yeah. And Dylan doesn't even know this, but I was supposed to start a podcast 6 months ago with somebody else. And it didn't happen because there just wasn't that mutual, all right, let's get this done. So you've got to find that connection. You've got to find that person that is going to not agree with everything, yeah, and not be the one that's going to sugarcoat everything for you or make you feel good about it. You got to find somebody that's going to go, you know what? That's a dumb idea, but if you think it's going to work, I'll be here to help you support that. And that's how it works. You know, it's really how it works. There, you know how many times I've looked at Dylan and went, you know, you're being dumb, you know, being stupid, and most of the time, I don't even have to tell him that, which is nice. I know. And most of the time, he doesn't have to tell me that, which is nice. You know, I mean, but everybody makes mistakes. Everybody does that. And everybody also underestimates each other. Mm-hmm. What we're saying is stop underestimating people. Give them a chance. Because if you give them a chance and you open up the opportunity for them to give you a chance, it will open the doors for you.
Yeah, and one thing, like, you know, I've been a leader for a while now. I'm a squad leader with the military.
Pretty cool.
And one thing that I've learned from being a leader, in being a leader in the military and being a leader in the business world is a little bit different. I've been a coach before. I am a coach now. I've coached freshman soccer. I coach men's adult soccer now. Being a leader you really need to be able to believe in people, and not only that, but give everyone the same opportunity, and not just like, and not speaking about like equal opportunity or anything like that. It's a far more interactive level. You need to be able to say to your weakest link and your highest link, in the chain, and you need to be able to give them the same opportunity to do things, and whether they can do it or not, you need to support them. You need to find something to build them with. Just because you don't like this guy does not mean that he's irrelevant. For the military, you can't allow one person in your, if you've got a 9-man or an 8-man squad, you can't allow one person to be irrelevant, because everybody has a specific job. Everybody has a task list that they need to be able to complete for the good of the team. The weakest link literally is a link in the chain to keep people alive.
Well, and I think that's pertinent to every day. I mean, whether it's somebody that's in a group that you are with, or whether it's somebody that you even share at any time with. It could be a guy that flips you off on the interstate. Yeah. But you know what? Like, there are things both for you to learn from that experience and for them to learn from that experience. And this concept of, you know what, I don't like you, so I'm just going to ignore you and act like you don't exist. That's what's causing a lot of issues, and that's what causes a lot of people issues. And like I said earlier, I was one of those people that's like, no, get the hell away from me. Yeah. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to confront that. I don't want to have anything to do with that. And ironically, that is where you learn the most. Mm-hmm. It really is. He's a coach. I've been coaching track and field for the last 6 years. I was a track and field athlete in college, and the kids that I cannot stand to be around sometimes are the ones that have made me the better coach. Yeah. The ones that make coaching easy, they make it fun for sure. The ones that make it difficult are the reason that I'm still coaching today. That's because they're the ones that made me go, you know what, Kerry, you haven't figured this out yet. If that kid feels uncoachable, you haven't figured it out yet. Yeah. And you know what, we need to start looking at that when it comes to life. If you haven't figured that stuff out yet, if you feel like that person's mistreating you, figure out why. Yeah. Go after it, because you're gonna thank yourself in the long run. There's so many lessons to be learned from that.
And it takes, that's where it takes some stones to step up to the plate and address that issue, because people, you won't like them all the time. You won't like that person all the time. And when you learn to build someone that you don't like, when you learn to coach someone or lead someone that you don't like, and it works for you, then the whole team together becomes a little bit more rewarding for me. I had a soldier that just wasn't cut out for the military a while back, and I did everything I could for him. Nobody liked him in the unit and that's up for debate. That's up for, whether you liked him or not, he was still a soldier to me, and I treated him like a human being. I gave him every opportunity that I could. I fought for him whenever I could. But at the end of the day, I always walked up to him and I told him straight up how it was. You need to work hard. You need to work harder. You need to do this. You need to do that. And I'm not going to bullshit you. If you don't do these things, you're looking at getting out of the military. And what ended up happening is he did get pushed out of the military. He had a lot of family issues. And he actually recently contacted me, and, unbeknownst to me, I had made a huge difference in his life. And it's things like that, like him reaching out to me again later on after all of this was said and done, and appreciating what I did for him. Regardless of whether I like him or not, I think he's a good person. I think he always had the intentions to do what he wanted to. He had other things, family issues, personal issues, things that, maybe if you talk to that person, you would never know that they were going through stuff like that. Right.
I think that's a hard thing for a lot of people to understand. We just assume that I didn't have a good interaction with that person. That person's an asshole, or they're, whatever. So I'm not going to deal with them. And what's ironic about that is that the more and more people I meet, and the more times that I have these interactions, and then follow those interactions up with almost a forced interaction where, I'm trying to push for a little bit more, people are good. Like, we got to stop acting like half the population's bad, half the population's good, and people are good. The things that you see in the news, and we don't have to get into that whole propaganda speech or whatever, but the things you see in the news, they put it on there on purpose. They put it on there on purpose. That's what gets us to watch. It is. We want to see the bad stuff. We want to see the awful stuff. It's the way our minds are programmed. But we got to remember that most people are good. The nasty things that happen are happening by the 1% of people in this world. Yeah. And there is a 99% of us that are not that type of person.
And like the bad things that are happening, what were the interactions of that person? Were there people there to actually support that person, or were they neglected by society? And I think, when we're talking about like things like gun control, it's like, I think the real question isn't about gun control itself. I think it's important to have that discussion, but on a different level. I think the basic question when we're talking about like mass shootings or terrorism is more or less, especially if it's considered lone wolf gunman kind of stuff, is the interaction with that person. What was the support structure for that person, or did they have a support structure?
Right.
And did that, even if they had a support structure, did their family or their friends actually try and figure this person out? Did they actually try and help this person out? I think that's one of the basic issues of the gun control issue at hand, is actually talking about interaction and trying to learn about people and bring people together in all aspects of life, and rather than just because this person's weird is shunning them from the social fabric of our society because he's weird and he does different things from us, rather than learn from him or try and understand or bring him into the fold and learn what he does or she does. What tends to happen is we shun that person, and hatred forms. Hatred forms because of neglect.
Yeah, each time that shunning happens, or each time that let's call it what it is, that lack of respect for that person happens. Yeah. I mean, each time that happens, it compounds the issue. We could never understand what it's like to wake up every single day and not have somebody show us even an ounce of respect.
Yeah.
We can't imagine what that's like for most of us, because we've grown up at least with some sort of mentor, somebody in our lives, whether you want to admit it or not. There's somebody in your life that has taught you, has mentored you, has showed you something, and it has showed you that respect.
Yeah.
You have felt that respect before, and that's kind of the thing we're talking about here with this. And I know we've been kind of rambling about it, but you've got to, if you want to find the next thing, if you want to find your passion, if you want to find what's going to be the next path for you to go down, you've got to put the respect into yourself first, and then into the people that you're interacting with. Yeah. When you show people that respect, they're going to show you doorways you never even thought were possible. It will astound you with what you're able to find.
Yeah, and bring people with you. I mean, that's one of the most beautiful things about life is simply the fact of bringing people with you. Take people along for the ride and help them out, and learn what it takes to actually build something together.
Yeah, compound it the other way. Bring somebody along that doesn't get that respect every day.
Yeah.
Bring them along with you, because if you've got a good group that you're working with, Dylan and I are mutual friends, and because of him, I have mutual friends of his, and vice versa, the other way around. And we have a group to where if we all got together right now, all of my friends that are kind of on my side, all of his friends on his side, there'd be mutual respect across the board. Yeah. And we got to start acting that way, and that we're going to bring that person along with us, because each interaction is going to create another good interaction for him, and we need to compound it the other way, him or her. We got to start getting a little better with that, I guess.
You do.
I do.
Maybe me. I might too.
Right.
Hey guys, that's all we have time for this time. Stay tuned for more. We're going to try and do this maybe monthly, potentially weekly, bi-weekly. I don't know. We're going to figure it out. We're still learning. So thanks for watching. Catch you next time. Be relentless.
Have a good one, guys.